So here's my new ORMUS packaging. I hope you guys all think it's pretty awesome. The top is actually plastic dip, so it's completely airtight. So yeah, now is a great time to get some. Again, it's $33 for the small jar and $55 for the large jar. This is the small jar that's being featured in this photo. And just so you know, both jars will last you a very, very long time. The small jar will last you months, and the large jar could last you up to a year, probably, depending on how much you use at one time. It's really not advised to use more than you would probably use, like you would use with salt. And there will be little tiny measuring spoons included in the future orders as soon as they arrive. They just haven't showed up quite yet. So beyond that, I also don't forget I do readings with medicine cards, and you can get a lot of insight sometimes that way. And I also do one-on-one helper sessions. So if you're having a hard time with the physical prospects or the physical aspects of this process, I can help with that as far as my experience and my understanding goes. Moving on, I also would just like to say, I know everybody's having a really difficult time right now. Hang in there. The energies are super, super intense, and they get more intense every day. If you can and you appreciate my work, if you could donate $1 or $2, that would be super great for me to be able to continue to bring content forward. I'm kind of in that position as everybody else is, being really, really squeezed financially, and I haven't really put anything up on Patreon, but if each of my subscribers just donated like $1, I would be okay, and I'd be able to bring content all the time. Otherwise, I have to balance my earthly duties, and that's just how that goes. So if you appreciate my work and you want me to continue, please think about contributing. There's always links in the description boxes for my PayPal, and I also can accept money through Facebook Messenger, so there's links for both in the description boxes. And as always, there will be links for all of these clips in the description boxes as well. So if you want to see any of these in their entirety, you can find those links there. Otherwise, hang in there, everyone. This is a pretty good, thought-provoking piece. I hope you all enjoy it. Let's dive right in.
I don't know if any of you guys have heard about this article in the New York Times. Well, apparently, honeybees are just disappearing all over the country. Tens of millions of them. All right, let's hear some theories about why this might be happening. Nobody? You're not interested in what happened to the bees? Excuse all the teachers? The administration makes us teach with a foot of snow on the ground. What is this?
There appears to be an event happening.
Homeland Security and the CDC
has reported attacks. Boston, Philadelphia,
Maryland. White House officials claims the CIA has a defense against chemical weapons.
I don't understand what you're saying. She says everyone's dead outside.
What's going on?
We lost contact.
With whom?
Everyone.
The government's testing something there. If it went wrong.
The affected area now includes California.
Authorities are now feeling, by the sheer numbers of attacks, that a terrorist group being responsible is becoming less and less likely.
Science will come up with some reason to put in the books. But in the end, it'll be just a theory. We will fail to acknowledge that there are forces at work beyond our understanding.
Our population has grown out of control. Our environment is in decay. Our resources have been depleted. Wars have ravaged our planet. We are fighting over the scraps of what remains. In 10 years, half the planet will be uninhabitable. In 15 years, half the world's population will have starved to death. Time is running out. outgrown our home. Our children will witness the end of days. But there is one place that gives us hope. Titan, the largest moon of Saturn. The only other place in our solar system with an atmosphere. A primordial ecosystem, just like Earth, seconds before life was born. Liquid methane raining into huge oceans and lakes that we can't swim in, and an atmosphere rich in nitrogen that we can't breathe. Too cold to exist, fiercely hostile to life as we know it. Beyond the reach of space science, but not modern genetics. No longer trying to reshape planets in our image, but evolving humanity into the stars. Imagine, with a few minor enhancements, you could breathe the air, swim in the waters, and survive the cold. What if Titan could become our home? Dr. Hernandez, I was waiting for you to object.
I still don't understand how our bodies won't reject the treatment.
Clinical trials were successful, signed off by NATO's Science and Technology Office.
You're talking forced evolution.
I'm talking survival of the species.
HPA axis reprogramming, methane lipid bilayer injections, G-force training underwater.
There are no guarantees, Dr. Hernandez. Some people won't take to the drugs. Some people will break during the training. Most of you will fail and be sent home.
How many of us will die?
$20 says Inker goes first. Can you read? What? I said, can you read, idiot? Because if you could, you see that this book is just a bunch of health warnings.
Why are you here?
I'm just pointing out that this
Playing at nothing, and you're going on and on. He's talking about the end of the earth. You got kids?
No.
Shut the fuck up or get the fuck out. Please, go on, Professor.
I was sent 5,000 personnel files from 16 NATO countries. I chose you because in your past, each of you has shown an ability to survive the harshest of conditions. Each of you is here because you understand the dire necessity of finding a new home for the human race. Maybe you're mad, ambitious, adventurous, but each of you has a rare willingness to put yourselves on the line for the sake of others. My hope is, when we're finished, all of you will be able to stand on Titan, take a deep breath, and swim in its waters. Maybe soar through its skies. You will become enhanced humans, supermen, able to live on another world. You'll become you, but better.
#8, 2008.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to focus on a controversial and mysterious condition known as Morgellons. There are thousands who say they suffer from its bizarre symptoms, but there are many in the worlds of science and medicine who believe that it's all in the mind. Well, now the government has weighed in, acknowledging that people are suffering and accepting the need for proper scientific investigation. So the Centers for Disease Control today announced that it would begin a new in-depth study to try and explain this strange condition. My co-anchor Cynthia McFadden reports.
When we first met Andell, she lived on Florida's Lake Mary in an idyllic setting. Her life was once idyllic too. Her family had caught the tail of the American dream. Her 3 daughters were good students, good athletes, and good kids.
It seems to be a pretty typical American family.
Yeah. Girls play softball. They're very good athletes. One catches, one pitches. Cheerleading competition, 4th in the nation.
But life now in the Dill household is far from perfect. Anne's 40-year-old husband, Tom, died 2 years ago in January, and she believes his death was due to a contagious illness that has infected her entire family.
Tell me what you believe is happening on your skin. It's like fibers that come out of your skin?
Yes, there's this fibrous material. It's in layers.
I look at your arm.
Our hands swell and they itch, and
it's been described as feeling as if either bugs are crawling on the surface of your skin or underneath your skin.
Underneath the skin has felt that way, especially at
According to Lisa Renee in the Ascension Glossary, plasma filaments are plasma when exposed to magnetic fields. They form filament structures that form bonds that interconnect with all other states of matter. So, an ascending human develops the ability to embody plasmic light. These filaments are directly experienced as interconnected lines of light that connect to everything and everyone. This includes the state of consciousness, which can truly experience oneness or unity. This is how we get solid plasma. It is made possible through the amazing alchemical process of the ascending human body. By directing our consciousness to connect our body, connect our particles to plasma light, electrons collect on the particles and start to create a plasmic crystalline structure that builds filaments which connect and communicate with all things.
On the scalp.
That something's moving under there.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even like to say it because you know that there are people watching this who are going to think you're crazy.
Because right away, that's what I know that they're going to say.
What would be your first guess if someone brought in something that looked like fibers?
They're fibers, I believe, from the environment, not from inside the skin.
Dr. Vincent DeLeo is chief of dermatology at New York's St. Luke's Roosevelt Medical Center. He has not examined Anne Dill.
I don't think this is any different than many patients I've seen who have excoriations and believe that there is something in their skin causing this.
So these open lesions would be a result of them scratching at their skin?
Yes, and then they begin to focus on those lesions and try to get them better, usually by picking out the fibers or the bugs or whatever it is.
Okay, let's see if there's some over there.
But for Mary Leitao, a scientist herself, opinions like Dr. DeLeo's don't add up. When her son Drew was just 2 years old, Mary noticed an odd sore on his lip that would not heal.
He very simply said bugs, and he pointed to his lips.
What Mary would do next would challenge the medical world and give hope to thousands of people across the country. As a biologist who once ran the electron microscope at Massachusetts General Hospital, she did what any scientist would do. She took a closer look.
What I saw were bundles of fibers, balls of fibers.
Even stranger, they glowed under UV light.
There was red and blue fluorescence in the fibers.
Armed with this research, Mary took Drew to a doctor at one of the country's leading hospitals, but he dismissed her tale of fibers and wrote to her pediatrician.
To basically say that my son needed Vaseline for his lips and that his mother, me, needed a thorough psychiatric evaluation.
Instead of a psych evaluation, Mary began poring through the medical literature, looking for clues. What she discovered was a 17th century reference to a strange disease with so-called harsh hairs called Morgellons. She named the strange fibers Morgellons disease and put the information on a website. Since then, more than 4,500 people have contacted Mary, claiming they too have Morgellons-type symptoms.
If you do a literature search in the medical literature, there is no Morgellons disease. The skin symptoms fit perfectly with the same group of individual symptoms that we saw in patients with delusions of parasitosis.
Delusions of parasitosis. In other words, it's all in their heads. And despite today's announcement, many doctors remain skeptical that this is a real medical condition at all.
They've pre-decided that these symptoms are too impossible to be real, so they've come to this conclusion that it's a delusion.
Randy Wymore is not a medical doctor, but he is a scientist at Oklahoma State University. He started out as a skeptic too, but years ago, after taking a closer look at the fibers, he changed his mind. And he says other doctors might also, if only they would look.
And the few that have seen patients often have never actually gotten down with either a handheld microscope or a dermatoscope and looked at the patient's skin to see these fibers.
On the day we filmed this, Wymore's colleague, Dr. Rhonda Casey, examined that chronic sore on Drew's lip, which after 5 years still had not healed.
Plain as day, definitely a fiber. There are fibers there, and I have never seen fibers in any other child's rash similar to this. Okay, come on in here, young ladies.
Andil and her children also came to Oklahoma for an examination. They're all relieved to be among doctors who believe them.
To be doubted is very hard.
To have the disease and on top of it,
Yes.
have no one believe
That
you.
is real. Yeah.
Anne shows Dr. Casey a tiny pimple on her daughter Sarah's thigh that after 3 months has not gone away.
It's just a big wad of fibers bursting forth.
Having lost so many close friends because they're scared to come over. And I don't blame them being scared to come over because it's hard for me to go to school and not know if I'm contagious or not.
And when we come back, the search for answers. Back now to Cynthia McFadden's look at the strange and controversial condition known as Morgellons. Its sufferers complain of stinging and crawling sensations under the skin and say their bodies sometimes grow strange string-like fibers on the surface. Most doctors and scientists believe these symptoms are imagined, a form of delusion, but there are others who believe the physical impact is painfully real.
The doctors in Oklahoma believe Morgellons may trigger permanent neurological damage and may be spread by close contact. The slow decline of Andil's husband, Tom, a powerfully built athlete, could be a case in point. He was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, but Ann says her husband had none of the lung problems typical of ALS sufferers.
He still had complete lung function, no oxygen, swallowed fine. No, I don't think he died from ALS.
Although Ann says she requested an autopsy, none was done. Tom's medical records were reviewed by Dr. Casey.
Many of the symptoms were similar to ALS, but I believe it was the neurologic decline of Morgellons disease.
Dr. Casey believes this rash is the real clue to Tom's death, though the doctors treating him never paid much attention to it.
Red, bright red, yeah, under his arms and on his hands, and his whole head itched and behind his ears.
Today, Ann worries that what happened to Tom is happening to her.
As you sit here right now, how do you feel?
My skin hurts, muscles hurt, to walk hurts.
Some of them have physical neurologic findings you can see, such as foot drop, palsy, but every one of them have differing degrees of neurologic decline.
One of these neurologic symptoms is brain fog, an inability to remember how to do simple tasks.
I would agree with your assessment. It is definitely not a human hair.
Dr. Wymore and his team are convinced that the fibers are at the center of the Morgellons mystery.
Whether bacterial, viral, parasites, insects, fungal, none of those really explain how those fibers and the specks are forming. And so it's very difficult to wrap one's mind around this because there is no example of anything that's quite like this.
But do these fibers grow from inside the body, as Morgellons patients believe, or do they come from the external environment, a kind of lint, as many doctors say? Whatever the cause, there is something strange about the fibers. Forensic scientist Ron Pogue at the Tulsa Police Crime Lab checked a Morgellons sample against the 100,000 known fibers in the FBI's national database.
No match at all. So this is some strange stuff.
Not cotton, not linen, not any known natural or synthetic fiber.
This isn't lint. This is not a commercial fiber. It's not.
Does that make you wonder whether, in fact, this might be a medical mystery?
I don't know what that means, to be honest. It's certainly a unique fiber.
It is a little mysterious, though.
Of course it is. It's a big jump from finding a fiber and producing a disease.
You certainly would agree that there's a lot of suffering going on.
Absolutely. No question about it. Your heart goes out to people like this.
Whole families who say they're suffering without knowing the cause or the cure, and until now have had little reason for hope.
We just lost our dad so unexpectedly, and we're scared we're gonna lose our mom too.
Their mother has been praying that medical help will come in time.
You okay? Look at pictures of us 4 years ago, and I don't even know who they are anymore. And my kids have to see not only their dad, but their mom disintegrating, and that's got to be really scary too, I think.
Today's announcement is an important first step towards uncovering the haunting mystery of Morgellons.
So let's take a quick look at why this is happening now, how we got here in some respects. So according to Renee from the Ascension Glossary, which I highly advise everybody, if they have not viewed the Ascension Glossary, it's a great, great source of information. So let's talk about the transposition fields in black goo. We're going to go all the way down to the part where it's called 3D Earth people repel their own spirit body. So what's happened down here is the alien genetic manipulation and all the enslavement has basically corrupted the core primal structures of creation to repel the spirit body, to repel that which is its natural organic life source. This is the weird sickness that's down here on Earth because it's like the very thing that created you, you're in mortal fear of, and you repel it. So when we understand from the guardian host perspective what corruption is and what genetic and spiritual damage is, this is the core of it. It's amazing to think that the human body on the 3D Earth repels its own spirit. It literally repels it out from the flesh. Because that's what the NAA were doing in shutting off the emotional body in that way. They were doing that so the soul could not house itself in the physical form. So this is what's going on. The templating that you have and the healing that you have is a massive coding that is not only just for you, but is actually going to support the healing of the male bodies. Because what we're getting at here is how deeply infiltrated, not just the psyche, but the physical raw material of the body is. It's been corrupted with the fallen angelic program.
Throughout the universe, there are forces fundamental to how things move. Just as gravity is key to how things move on Earth, a process called magnetic reconnection is key to how charged particles speed through space. The more we understand how those particles are accelerated, the better we can protect our spacecraft and astronauts as we explore deeper into the solar system. And now, NASA's Magnetospheric Multiscale Spacecraft, or MMS, has discovered magnetic reconnection occurring in a new and surprising way near Earth. Typically, images of our planet from space show a blue-green sphere engulfed by the darkness of space. But invisible to the eye, a vast network of magnetic energy and particles surround our planet. Earth's magnetic field creates a protective bubble that shields us from highly energetic particles that stream in both from the sun and interstellar space. As the solar wind bathes our planet, Earth's magnetic field lines absorbs this energy and gets stretched. And like elastic bands, they eventually release energy by snapping. As a result, particles in the region are flying at supersonic speeds. That burst of energy is magnetic reconnection. It's pervasive in the universe. It happens on the sun, around Earth, and flings particles across the solar system. Scientists have observed this phenomenon many times in the magnetosphere, Earth's vast magnetic environment. Now in a new study, MMS caught the process occurring in a new region. For the first time, magnetic reconnection was detected in the turbulent magnetosheath, the boundary between the magnetosphere and solar wind. This region is made up of turbulent plasma. It's one of the most chaotic regions in the near-Earth space. MMS captured 3D observations by flying 4 identical spacecraft in a tight pyramid formation through the magnetosheath. These arrows show the hundreds of observations MMS took to measure the changes in particles and the magnetic field. This is the moment MMS sees bursts of energy from magnetic reconnection. But these signatures don't look like standard reconnection. Compared to standard reconnection that occurs over tens of thousands of miles, this new magnetic reconnection spans only a couple of miles within turbulent plasma. These reactions are essentially much smaller but more stretchy elastic bands that accelerate particles 40 times faster. In short, MMS spotted a completely new magnetic mechanism that's much quicker than we've seen before. Just like when you mix milk into coffee, turbulent plasma in space moves randomly and creates vortices. It can transport particles and energy, but a lot is unknown about how these particles move through these regions. Showing that this new magnetic reconnection plays a role in turbulent plasma gives scientists insights into how turbulence influences particles moving through space. By looking at such fundamental processes in space at both large and small scales, scientists can learn what drives the complex environments we travel through to explore our solar system and beyond.
So it took Raymond Gosling and me some time to sort this out and get it working properly. And but it was very exciting to see all the spots on the photographic film, which fairly sharp spots, which indicated it was a fibre consisted of a mass of crystals of DNA. And so that's the evidence that DNA was crystalline.
So let's discuss the silicate matrix as defined by Lisa Renee in the Ascension Glossary. Original human genetic imprint designed to manifest 12 strings of DNA, which would allow for interdimensional travel and existence without deterioration of the biological form. It must be repaired, built, or activated. The original angelic human 12-strand DNA is called the Diamond Sun DNA. The Orifeme original prototype for angelic humans that was created by the founders has a 24-strand DNA and is called the Double Diamond Sun Body DNA. Further, there is a 48-strand DNA founder race line called the Emerald Sun. Diamond Sun Body. The Orifeme is a part of the Diamond Sun DNA Christos lineages, the original humans created from the Guardian founder race's lines. The Diamond Sun refers to the original design of the angelic human 12-strand DNA silicate matrix. This was the potential DNA and higher consciousness experienced by angelic human beings in previous time cycles on the 5D parallel Earth previous to its cataclysm. The Double Diamond Sun refers to the original founder Orifeme Christos design of a fully embodied 12-strand DNA and further access to 24 other dimensions of consciousness while in a human body. When the Orifeme DNA potential is activated, it allows for physical body immortality and the ability for the consciousness body's full transmutation out of dimensional time. Shifting carbon density. Side note, let's just discuss real fast that carbon equals 666. 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neutrons. So when they talk about staying away from 666, they're talking about bypassing our carbon bodies. That's what they're talking about. Back into the definition. Shifting carbon density. There were groups of souls, see soul matrix, that were responsible to anchor and work with the first 5 DNA strands and to participate in the Earth experiment in working with those particular levels of consciousness. Our original goal was to re-evolve the divine human template to its original intention, which was as a 12-strand DNA, which would mean 12 simultaneous dimensions of existence, which while still retaining a particular type of form. The form would not be this dense. In terms of the carbon material of our physical elemental body it is comprised of at this time, It would be more of a silicate or etheric plasma waves type of nature. So this is where we are going. We are clearing the carbon-based density out of our molecular and subatomic structures and becoming less dense and more refined, in that we are starting to anchor more of our actual crystalline structure, which is of a silicate crystalline base. We can imagine that as we go through this transformation, it can be very intense at times. Side note, that is the understatement of my lifetime. Back in. It's like taking the most dense carbon form, a carbon atom, and attempting to alchemically shift that into more and more refined states of oscillating patterns of higher vibration. So, that is our goal at this time, as a natural part of what the ascension process is. So, it's important to keep that in mind. 12 strands DNA. The original human DNA pattern is arranged into 12 dimensionalized mathematical programs, each of which set the blueprint for one DNA strand. Each strand is composed of 12 base magnetic Mion, M-I-O-N, female codes, and 12 base electrical Dion, D-I-O-N, male acceleration codes. The 12 base codes and 12 acceleration codes hold the mathematical program for each double helix strand, which combine to form a set of 12 vector codes. One base code plus one acceleration code is equal to one vector code. The 12 vector codes of the human genome manifests as 12 nucleotides that form the nucleotide base pairs, which are the entire DNA strands are composed. Due to the NDC, also called the checkerboard mutation, a natural sonic control program installed in the planetary field, only 4 of the vector codes have been active in biological Earth life since the Luciferian Rebellion. The foundations of human DNA is miniaturized crystallized frequency. That is, patterns of electromagnetic light that magnetically group into crystalline form. These multidimensional crystalline templates are referred to as DNA seed codes. The DNA seed code, the template for one DNA strand, is composed of 12 magnetic particle units and 12 electrical antiparticle units. Each DNA strand is composed of the frequency patterns and light spectrum of one-dimensional band. Each DNA strand represents a fire letters code program sequence corresponding to one-dimensional frequency band of consciousness. 24 codes equals one DNA strand. The level of frequencies that are accredited into the personal morphogenic field will determine the level of DNA strand assembly that you possess. As a person pulls in more frequency bands from the dimensional unified fields, the personal frequency accretion level rises, and thus more DNA codes can assemble and activate. As we understand ascension mechanics, we study patterns, numbers, archetypes, physics, and cycles. Everything in creation has intelligent purpose and pattern, and nothing is random. As such, we can take into account the 4 basic stages of biological cycles, which include 2 additional catalysts into the life stream called the taskmaster. Saturn acts as the taskmaster, which means if you have not figured out how to get aligned to your heart, some massive life-altering event, or even your exit point, death, will transpire as you were not paying attention to your soul task. There is no judgment in this, as you set the exit point yourself. However, if you are wasting life force energy and not being productive, the soul may call you home and invest its energy in another one of your lifetimes. During the tasking periods, you will notice many people leave the planet. As an example, we have seen a lot of celebrity rock stars leave the planet around age 27. This was the taskmaster calling them back home for a start over. So there's basically a few age groups. I'm not going to read the entirety and the rest of this, so please look this up yourself. It's under the silicate matrix in the Ascension Glossary, but they talk about at age 12, there's a specific time that this is for spiritual development. At age 22, there's another time. At age 27 is when the Saturn taskmaster comes in, and you can actually go through your exit point, or they call it an escape hatch, if things aren't really working out. Another one is age 33. Another one is age 44. And then we have age 54. I think my personal opinion is, as we have chosen as a collective to go through this ascension process in an accelerated rate, I think a lot of this that normally would wait till these older ages, 44, 54, you know, etc., all of this is happening now. So that's just my own personal opinion. Let's get back to the video.
So what are gamma waves?
Gamma waves are actually very, very fast, what's called high amplitude, big brain waves. And gamma waves are very interesting because most people don't produce them and can't produce them actually. They're a very rare brain wave. And what they do, when you're able to activate gamma, it's sort of like they pull the brain together. More brain cells fire at the same time. And the metaphor that's useful is when you have an orchestra that's warming up, and you've got the brass section, the woodwind and the percussion and all that sort of stuff, and they're warming up, it sounds terrible. But when the conductor comes on and gets this little wand, little conducting stick sort of thing, and taps it, then all of a sudden the orchestra all comes together, and then the conductor leads that orchestra and creates this beautiful symphony. And that's very much like the brain, very much like the gamma state. So when you activate the gamma state, the rest of the brain sort of falls into sync, literally, and then from there, you can tell your brain, your body, anything. You can reprogram at that deepest level because more of your brain is firing at the same time. Your mind, your brain, and your body is becoming coherent. And coherent is what we want. It's the best state. You need to be coherent and balanced inside to reprogram new information into your mind, into your brain, and into your body. And that's what the gamma waves do. They're very fast frequency waves. Interestingly, a study was done at the University of Wisconsin by a guy called Dr. Richard Davidson. And he had Buddhist monks in there and had their brains measured while they were doing a specific heart-based meditation. And these Buddhists, I think, had over like 10,000 hours of meditation experience. So they were monitoring their brains, and they also had a control group of students that had been taught meditation for a week. And then they did the same meditation technique and monitored their brains. And what the Buddhists showed was these high amplitude, big, strong gamma waves showing coherency of the brain and the body. Whereas the control group, the students, they just showed alpha waves, which alpha waves are just like a calm consciousness, a relaxed consciousness, which you would expect from meditation, you know, become calmer. But so what I've shown in my two research studies, measuring brain waves, doing the technique, shows how to create these gamma waves. So by doing this on a day-to-day basis, you are literally training your brain and making your whole system coherent. And also what gamma waves do, they send signals, particularly when you get these frontal lobes activated behind the eyebrows here on the forehead, they send signals to the emotional brain, deep into the center of the brain, to sort of turn the volume down on the emotional brain, to quieten down. So that when you do that on a day-to-day basis, combined with the other gamma techniques, you realise that your reactions to the environment, to your friends, to your colleagues in relationships, are nowhere near as emotionally reactive and autopilot. You know, you can think clearly and you can have new ways of being. And that is exactly the key. New ways of being, new ways of behaving. And that comes from training the brain into this gamma state. So it's a powerful state to do, and it's brilliant to be able to do this using the techniques.
Question, what happens during an activation, looking at that in a subjective sense. But the other way one could look at that question, what happens during an activation, is what's actually happening. So rather than the subjective experience you go through, what is actually happening to you? And that's really, really interesting. So what's my understanding of this is, when an activation takes place, within the biology, within the sort of chemical makeup of the body, let's, for example, take the DNA. I've explained how this is a memory fractal, a memory field. But what's actually happening is, it's difficult for me to go through actual chemical and biological processes because I'm not studied in that area. I can only tell you what the 9 have told me. So if you could imagine that there is like, within the DNA structure, we've got this double helix structure. And then behind this double helix structure, we have these filaments of light that exist in more than one place. They exist in many places at once. Some of these strands exist in all places. Some of these strands exist in 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions or multiple dimensions. And they're made of matter and antimatter. And they're made of a material that is created when antimatter and matter merge, which is plasma. But plasma presents in many different forms. It can be solid, it can be semi-solid, it can be like a liquid material, and it can be pure light as well. So the pure light part of plasma is what we're looking at. And what actually happens during an activation is these filaments, these non-physical antimatter merged filaments, begin to change their shape. They change their structure. And it's done in exactly the same way as I was talking about telepathy, how we read code. Well, the strands of the DNA mirror the way we read the code and mirror our emotional output. So if we are telepathically or empathically picking up on someone else's emotions, they're giving off like a field of code, a field of electricity or magnetism or a merge of the two that is a living entity. When they have a fractalized symmetrical thought process and not a random confusion, when they create this fractalized thought process, then the code is alive. When one has a confusing random thought process that is tinged with a lot of negative emotion, that is not living in the same way. It does take on its own structure, but it's got a different life force than a fractal cohesive thought process. So we can feel this. Well, the DNA is an absolute match to this. So what we feel emotionally, which is simultaneously triggered by the visual, because we can have an emotional feeling that doesn't have a visual with it. We can have a visual that doesn't have an emotion with it. If you want to look at chakras, you're looking at the heart and the alignment with the third eye. So when this emotion and a matching aligned thought visual takes place together, this creates a fractal, and we're using actually all the chakras, not just those 2. The DNA responds in matching formation, and it starts to regather itself. It starts to regroup itself. The 9 likened this to knitting together. That was the phrase they said was most accurate. It's like they knit together, but they don't, you know, like if you're knitting a scarf with a piece of wool, you've got wool and you actually create a scarf. You've knitted a structure out of that wool. But another way that they explained this to me is in the film Avatar, and I think I probably mentioned this when I did that Facebook Live. In the film Avatar, they would take their plait and they'd have these little filaments out in their plait, and the animal that they're riding would have these little filaments in the mane, and they'd push them together and they'd fuse together and become one. They would unify. It's a unification of light. So this is what's happening within our DNA filaments. They're regrouping into a formation and a structure that is very linked to this memory grid. The DNA is actually reading these memory fields. This is what happens in an activation. And what's so interesting about this when it comes to Ascension is, in order to read these memory fields, and we can all do this, we all read these fields of memory. So we read our own memory. You may have heard that when we die, we go through a life review when we're in the world between worlds. We review our life. This is sort of standard knowledge within the spiritual aware community of what happens after we die. And that is what happens. That life review, however, is a reading of the field of one's own experience and memory. So it's kind of like a playback. If you imagine that the matrix is this computer, and within that computer there are recordings on tape, cassette or CD or whatever. When you die, you then push the playback button and you play back your life, and you play back the emotional imprints of the memory and the experience, not only that you had, but you play back the experience that other people had when they interact with you. So you learn rapidly from the experience. Now, if your experience has remained fractal and whole, as in individualized, goes into the memory field for any being to access. So there might be a being from the Pleiades in training that needs to come to incarnate to Earth and needs to have a lot of knowledge. That being will need to be debriefed of its mission, and it will need to go through some training first before it incarnates into this reality. So that being can access your memory fields and take on the experience that you lived. This is another way of looking at past lives. This is why multiple people can remember being the same person in a past life. That's because they've accessed one another's memory field. There's a lot of structure to this. You can't just wade on into a memory field and think, oh, I'm going to steal those person's memories. Not in that respect. Yes, that's been done in a way, but that's a different story. But within the parameters and the etiquettes and the boundaries of what you are in alignment with as a soul, you can actually imprint yourself with the memories and the experiences of another soul. So basically, you've lived their life, and you're a replica of that lifetime, and that's because you need those experiences. The whole cosmic world is so complex and so vast. To try to actually break it down is quite a challenge, really, and that's what's happening. We're all being activated. There are planetary activations occurring right now that are coming in from stars, planets, the sun, cosmic alignments. There are activations coming in from other people you meet in the street, films you watch, books you read. There are activations coming in the form of things like I'm doing. I'm talking to you in a video, or I channel a video and put visuals and music, and that creates an activation in itself. There are activations everywhere. So we're constantly being activated right now. Now, what the difference is, I was saying about when you die, you read these memory fields of yourself. So you go through the life review and you can experience the interactions you've had with everyone else, and it all happens in a split second. It's an instant, well, to some souls it will appear instant. Some other souls may be more linear in their processing of the experience of the life review, but that will depend on what you've been doing here in this life first, because dying doesn't make you all of a sudden, oh, I know everything. You can be at exactly the same level as someone who's living, or someone who's living may know more than somebody who has passed over. Dying is opening a door and walking into another room, basically. It doesn't mean that that room is way better than this room here. I know in a lot of biblical presentations of knowledge, it will be, oh, this is an awful place to be, and then when you die you go to heaven, and then it's a much better place. It can be like that, but that will always be in alignment to what you are. So you can have heaven here or hell here. You can have heaven when you die or hell when you die. It doesn't make any difference. It's all to do with yourself. Everything is to do with yourself and your own imprint. So when you die, you go through this life review, which is a mapping of your own memory system. Then as you grow, you can map the systems of other individuals, depending on whether you're incarnating back on Earth or going to the Pleiades or Sirius or leaving this dimension and going to different, wherever it is you're going, whatever it is you are ready to do, you will be able to access this sort of deep, this deep structure that is an account of memory and experience. And the structure is a living entity or group of entities, many group of entities, infinite entities. They are living structures, because thought and memory is a living thing. Emotion is a living thing. So that's what you do when you die. Now, when you go through an incarnation, you would wait until you die to go through your life review. And then when you've gone through your life review and you've mapped these memories, you'll incarnate again and you'll go through amnesia and you'll forget. And then you'll go through your life again in a linear tracked way. And then again, you will die. And then again, you will go through a life review. And hopefully you'll get out of a cycle and you'll be able to become aware and upgrade and individualize. But what's happening now on this planet is ascension. And ascension is very different. Basically, ascension is the life review while you're still alive. You do not need to die to go through the life review, which is the mapping of your own memory matrix. How does that occur? Well, that occurs through DNA reconstruction, because if we only have a double helix in our DNA field, we cannot access memory outside of a linear reality. Everything is linear. In order to access our memories, we must become non-linear. And that is why we are going to higher dimensions or multiple dimensions, because those are states of consciousness that is non-linear. So what's happening in the activation is you are becoming non-linear. You are activating the particular strand formations within this living light stream that you have within your cellular makeup. It's in your blood, it's in your bones, it's in your brain, it's in your skin, it's in your entire body, and they're merging together and changing their formation. As long as you stay fractal in your thoughts, you will keep this fractal, this rose shape within your DNA, and it will unfold and unfold and unfold. And that's DNA activation. So the subjective way of experiencing this is all to do with feeling and emotion, and the activation itself is about becoming non-linear and moving into this field of memory.
So that's a lot to take in all at one time. You might need to go back and relook at some of this. I'm just like I have to do sometimes. I have to go back and re-break down some stuff when it's a lot of information all at once. I hope some of that helped some of you. This is a great intro for other people that are just entering this process. Feel free to share. In fact, please share. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe button if you haven't already. But this is a really important video. I think the ripple effects will be really great for our community. Otherwise, everybody hang in there. It's not an easy process. The frequencies are so high right now. It's just each day is a new, magical, interesting place to be. So I love all of you. I hope that all of you are finding these energies in an amazing way, and that you're seeing amazing changes in your life. I know it's been hard. I know that we've had to tear down old foundations that were not in our best and highest good, and it's felt a little bit like claustrophobia at the nicest. It's probably the nicest way to put that. And it's been really hard on a lot of us. But everybody who's still here, you got to pat yourself on the back. It is very difficult. We've never seen anything like this in our history. Where we're going and what we're doing with our physical bodies right now is amazing. So just know that everything you do matters. Every thought that you think, every action that you create it matters. It matters in a huge way. So the more we reprogram our thoughts, the more we reprogram our DNA, this gets a lot easier as you go. For those just in the beginning of the process, it's a very difficult beginning. You have a lot of purging and cleansing and detoxing. So just hang in there. It does get easier, I promise. So very much love to all of you. I'll talk to you soon.